everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Unlocking Potential. I'm your host, Gabrielle, and today we have a fascinating discussion lined up, brought to you by Baldwin Technologies. Today, we've gathered an exceptional panel of industry experts to tackle the topic of paper shortages. So we're diving deep into the lessons learned and just how we can prepare for the future. Our guests today include Toni McQuilken, who's senior editor at Printing United, as well as Kent Tucker, vice president of Tucker Castleberry, and Julie Brannen, Director of Regional Sales at Monadnock Paper Mills. Welcome, everyone. This next question is more good news, bad news type. Just what were some of the most significant challenges that you found at the height of the paper shortage? And on the flip side of that, just maybe what were some of the unintended positive reactions to come out of it?
I think from what I saw, probably one of the bigger challenges, and obviously there's a lot we've talked about, the cost of shipping containers. I think we had touched on that a little bit, but I think pre-pandemic, people I talked to, the average shipping container was maybe $3,000-ish, somewhere in that range. At its height, I had manufacturers and paper suppliers alike telling me they were spending in excess of $30,000 for that exact same shipping container. So that was one of the big challenges that, even when you could get it, it was significantly more expensive. That fortunately has come way back down. I don't know that everyone I've talked to has said it's back to pre-pandemic levels, but so instead of 30,000, maybe it's in the $5,000 to $6,000 range, which is quite a bit better. It's not 3,000, but it's not 30 either. In terms of some of the good things to come out of it, I think, Kent, you kind of mentioned it, the flexibility. I think that a lot of brands and print buyers were very stuck on, this is how we've always done it, this is the paper we use. And the pandemic really forced them to get creative. And a lot of them have discovered there are better options out there for what they want to do. And so they've experimented and gotten creative. And I think we're starting to see that trickle down into some of the really cool applications that have started to come out now, that various brands are trying, because they're not in that rut that they had been in for years.
Yeah, and from our standpoint, really one of the benefits were, we started hearing from a couple of our merchants about the upcoming paper shortage, and so we started buying paper as soon as we could. And what we did is we actually ended up winning a lot of business from printers that didn't buy paper. And so it was, that was a benefit for us, probably not all printers, but for us it was, because we were able to say, hey, yes, this is your price. Yes, we have the paper on the floor. Obviously the downside was the paper is almost twice as expensive as it was pre-pandemic. But I had a couple of clients that I talked into buying paper at about a 40% discount before they used it. I knew they were going to use it, and I told them about the upcoming paper shortage, and I really encouraged them to buy paper ahead of time, and they did. And by the time they ended up using it, I explained to them that they saved about 40% on if they had bought the paper today versus what they bought it for 6 months ago. So, and then I guess, the unintended benefit today is, if you look back on it, actually some of the paper prices are starting to come back down. And so the people that are used to the higher prices are actually seeing a little bit of a price break on the paper from where they bought it last year. So, everybody loves to save a little bit of money when they can. So I think that's one of the current benefits of I guess, if you could say, the supply chain issues.
There was so many more than just paper. Like if you look at the latex, you couldn't get paint in Home Depot. Latex is used in inks. It's used in certain paper substrates. So in summarizing what both just said, Gabriella, it looks to me like, I know somebody used the word rut. When I was a printer, we would joke about that. Like, there's the job jacket. Just do it the same way you did before. The only thing that's changing is the quantity. No one wanted to look, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Same thing happens on the mill side. And if we had products that were performing very well, we were afraid to change one single thing in it. But we were forced to change things last year due to the scarcity of raw materials, adhesives, latex. We had to try different types. If you want to look at like medication, the generic versions of things. And a lot of innovation came from that. So we found that there were more efficient ways that we could do things and not have to sacrifice performance. And in terms of customers, we had the opportunity or we were asked anyway, to meet many new friends. Our mill it was a little challenging. The biggest challenge for me is we protected our legacy business, the folks that have been with us all these years when we didn't have enough to go around. Those folks got the first rights of refusal or the commitments before the newer people coming in to the mix did, but we still were able to make a lot of new friends, and people got to meet us that wouldn't have normally thought to meet us, and vice versa.
Right. And I think probably the hardest, one of the people that had the hardest time during the pandemic and the shortage were the merchants, because like you said, Julie, they had every customer that they've sold to screaming for paper. So they had only certain amounts of paper that they could allocate to each printer. And they had to figure out who to give it to and why to give it to them. And, they probably had to make some really tough decisions. And now, even on this side, even today, I sign our paper bills every month, and I look at them and they're a fraction of what they were, 4 years ago, just because we're trying to chew through so much inventory. So I would imagine the merchants now are probably having a really hard time managing inventory, because they don't know how much paper to bring in, because they don't know how much paper Tucker Castleberry has on their floor, and what they're going to need, and what they have historical usage, but they don't know, what we currently have on our floor. And I would imagine that would make their job really, really difficult, because what they don't want to do is they don't want me to call them and ask, for 10,000 pounds of cover stock and them not have it, because they know I'm going to go down the street and find it from somebody else. So I would imagine the merchants are having a really hard time, and probably have been for the last 6 months, managing inventory and, like you said, forecasts for next year.
Yeah, same problem, same challenge the mills are having, because we don't want to be without, we don't want to be in that situation again, but no one knows how much to put on their floor and what. Because last year was so abnormal. There's so many people that aren't ordering now, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be next month or in January. I wish I could tell you that I was seeing a big change in our printer network, so to speak, across the board of, hey, what'd you learn? And how about some forecasting, or narrowing it down, or taking an active role with the print sales teams with those end users and determining the substrate that they select for the year. But we've seen some improvement, but we're not there yet. We're still guessing in the dark a bit.
Well, still following on this thread, paper mills couldn't keep up with the demand during the paper shortage. So how are they working now to increase production capacity, keep up, and just reduce lead times?
Well, again, you've got a lot that have converted over to strictly to board or to packaging, because they just had to give up or gave up on the lack of predictability involved in paper. There's still plenty of people printing and mailing out there, but our industry had a lot of mills, a lot of printers, I would imagine too. It was a little oversaturated, and there's been a lot of consolidation. Unfortunately, a lot of folks didn't make it through this. So what are we doing? We're looking at the sales. We're rationalizing SKUs of product SKUs. We're looking at our top 5, our type 10. We're going deeper with those. And the unfortunate result of that, of course, is we have to put some other things on what we call making order only, not to just be sitting there waiting for somebody to decide to order it someday. So your selection in some ways is getting more narrow. That's what paper mills are doing, but they're going deeper with it. And the industry is somewhat taking care of itself a little bit with the consolidation right now. So we're watching what our other colleagues or competitors, however you want to look at it, are doing in the industry. And we're trying to fill, at least I can speak for our mill, we're filling gaps that we see the others not sitting in. Because we all don't need to be making the same thing and then wondering why there's too much. So.
Well, as we start to wrap up the podcast and end the discussion, let's start looking towards action items here. So for future outlook, what are some important action items or things that paper mills, businesses can do to ensure preparedness for future challenges that may come up of this size, in escalation, or maybe something smaller? But either way, how can you ensure that preparedness?
Well, I think from us, luckily, it's communication, really. We we buy the paper from the merchants, but we got to be in constant communication with them and tell them, hey, this is what we're seeing in the marketplace. This is what we're hearing from our customers. This is the type of demand we're expecting. And on the flip side, they kind of tell us from the mill side what they're hearing, what they're talking about as far as allocation or availability, or if you're looking at the overseas stuff, the shipping issues, whatever. Anytime, we've been very fortunate. We've got a very good relationship with our merchants, and they've been really, really, really good in communicating with us as far as what to expect, and vice versa. We tell them what we're looking at. So I think just the communication from us to the merchants, and the merchants to the mills, and us to our customers. I think that's the most important thing to move forward, is just, being able to mitigate any unforeseen risk or seen risk down the road that you think might impact, our customers' business. Because at the end of the day, we're buying the paper from the merchant who's buying it from the mill, but at the end of the line is my customer. So we have to keep them informed and keep everybody in the chain of communication with the paper informed as well.
And on that note, the mills are we are taking a far more active role in communication with, using his example with his customer as a brand with the printers in the middle, with people like Tucker Castleberry. There used to be this chain that he just mentioned, and everyone didn't really talk to each other. It was a hierarchical approach. But we're doing away with a whole lot of that now. I've been since last year. We're getting people involved. We're communicating directly with the printers, with the brands, so that we can ensure that message of cohesion is out there. People are talking about it. They're sharing the reality, things you didn't want to know about before because you were too busy. People learned they couldn't afford to not know. So we're taking a much more active approach to get a pulse on the market, because it's very difficult now. The way it used to work isn't working anymore.
No, we were spoiled. We used to be able to call up and have the paper within a couple of days. 99.9% of everything we needed, our merchants were stocking, and it was easy to find. And we had an entire wall full of paper, availability, and different sizes and weights and finishes, and it was all beautiful. And now, like you said, it's all consolidated.
And besides the communication, it's balance. We're out there trying to achieve a balance, and so are a lot of our businesses. The customers and businesses, they relied, it was so much on, it doesn't matter what it is, just give me the cheapest thing. And no, I don't care where it came from. It could come from China or Kalamazoo. We don't care. Just, it is what it is. And nowadays they realize when that fell down so fast and so hard, balance is another major thing people are seeking to achieve to prevent what you just asked about. A balance between a domestic and a overseas supply chain. I mean, global economies need both, not just one.
Well,
I would say I'll kind of echo on that it's all about relationships. It's building those relationships with the mills, with the merchants, but also with customers. I know, Julie, you had mentioned forecasting. It's the education part of it with customers, and teaching them that you can't just call me anymore tomorrow and tell me that you need something printed by the end of the week and expect me to be able to get the paper in. That's not. They need to be thinking further ahead. They need to, forecast a month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months out, even if it's just a general idea of, okay, here's kind of what we've got in the works and what we're planning, so that the printers then can forecast correctly, so that they can talk to the merchants to forecast correctly, so that the mills can create what they need correctly. And it really comes back down to relationship building, that it has to be, communication and relationships. That's really the only way we are going to right size and kind of stabilize the industry.
What does the future look like in the coming years for the paper industry? Because all the lessons learned that we just discussed over this episode, from all of the challenges that we've been going through with the paper shortage, do you think at the end of this all that the printing industry is better prepared now for similar disruptions in the future? Just where do you see the market going? What are your thoughts there?
That's $1 million question, I think. I would love to know the answer. I don't think anybody could have predicted the shipping issues, the energy issues, the domestic mills consolidation. throw in a little pandemic on top of that, and which probably are all intertwined. But I don't know how you prepare for it, to be honest with you. I mean, it was, we've been, like I said, we've been in business for 75 years. In Monadnock, y'all are over 200 years. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you guys have never seen anything like it. I know we certainly haven't. So I don't know that you can prepare for it. Selfishly, I would love for there to be about 10 more domestic coated mills in America, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think most of them have either mothballed machines or transitioned over to packaging. So I mean, I don't know. I was nervous as a printer that the way of us buying paper was going to change forever, and it's kind of reverted back to where it was, where we need 14,000 sheets of cover stock, and it doesn't matter really what kind of brand it is. It's just a house sheet, whatever, and we're able to get that within a day or two usually now. And I was nervous that the merchants were going to stop carrying paper, and that we were going to be having to be hold inventory here. But it's kind of reverted back the other way. So I don't really know. Julie, you may be able to speak better, from the mill side on something like that. But I mean, for us, I don't know how you could ever plan for what we just went through the last 24, 30 months.
I mean, one of the things, it's kind of hard to articulate, but I'm going to put this in paper mill and printing language. Lean manufacturing. One thing about sustainability people don't understand, if you do it with intent, and you do it not to just be green or from a marketing perspective, it actually makes your business more efficient and more profitable. It shines the light on any of the bugs running around that you don't even normally see. And I do mean that metaphorically. But sustainability, let's just always keep in mind that environmentalism is only one tiny piece of it. Sustainability is that you're supposed to make a profit. If you don't make a profit, you won't stay in business. And then it won't be there for the consumer or the end user to be able to utilize. So one of the things that we are doing is we're diving much deeper into our sustainability and socially responsible practices. We're already in ISO quality management 9001 and ISO 14001 environmental mill, but we're continuing to raise the bar for ourselves with goals each year that exceed where we are today. And again, recycled is just one tiny piece of it. So we are not we're changing. I don't want to say changing our approach. I'll say that we're honing in on fine tuning who we are, what we do best, and doing it well, instead of trying to be everything to everyone. I know that sounds like common sense, but when you're in a type of business, and I know most printers are, you certainly will have printers that are financial printers, and that's most or all of what they do. But in general, commercial printers are attempting to service the needs of their customers. That could be financial, that could be direct mail, that could be trade show needs. You don't want to have to tell a customer, I can do this for you, but I can't do that for you. So you'll have to go somewhere else for that. So it's kind of counterintuitive. But we're looking very closely at that, because the reality is we've got to dig deeper. Even if you look at something like stock that he's mentioning, we're going to have to narrow in who we are, what we do best, and do that very well, so that it's there for people to have, and we got to tighten it in a little bit.
Yeah, I found for the print industry as a whole, I think what's interesting is that I don't know that I think the overall volume will necessarily change, but what is being printed and in what quantities of each thing is drastically changing.
Digital,
Runs are runs are getting quite a bit shorter. They're getting more versions, not necessarily personalized, but they're getting more version for regions, or for specific college towns, or whatever it is. And that then will impact the demand for the paper and substrates. That if you're still printing 100,000, but instead of one long run of a single paper of 100,000 sheets, you are instead printing 10 of 1,000 sheets, and they're all different. Yes, that volume is still there, but it's very different. And I think that's going to be something that as an industry we're going to have to figure out how to get a good handle on so that it is still efficient and economical and everybody can still get what they need.
I'm glad she said that. I should have said that. What's one of the major undertakings our mill is on right now for the last 2 years? We have a heavy focus on digital in general, but specifically the HP world of digital because of the techniques that they're wielding right now in terms of personalization, uniqueness. That was something else we saw with COVID. People wanted to feel important. They didn't feel important. They felt isolated. And that movement is still moving strong and getting higher and higher. I joined Monadnock 5 years ago. We didn't really pay a lot of attention, or we weren't at that time, to the digital movement. It is a tremendous focus of the mill now to support that movement. Papers or box boards or wall coverings or gift cards, plastic replacements. We have more digital offerings now, and those are unique than we have ever had. And it's playing hand in hand with sustainability, the segment of the market moving to that. Smaller runs, more personalized.
Yeah, it's funny that digital direct mail is probably one of the few areas of print that we've seen an explosion of a return to during the pandemic, and since that, we're all kind of in that digital fatigue, screen fatigue, that we get how many emails and newsletters and we're bombarded every day, and it's easy to just sort of overlook them. But brands are starting to realize that they could get a fraction of a % response rate on an email, or they can get something. I think the last study I saw was like a 30% response rate on a direct mail postcard. That's a pretty huge difference. And that means that, a brand is going to be printing those personalized, those versioned, they want to get it out there. They want to return to print because they're realizing how important print is in getting their message out and in getting, that brand recognition.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up the conversation. So thank you to Toni, Ken, and Julie for joining us on this episode of Unlocking Potential to discuss paper shortages, lessons learned, and preparing for the future. It was a pleasure to have you all on the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Absolutely. And as always, if you'd like to learn more, please visit baldwintech.com and look for this podcast wherever it is you get your podcasts at. I've been your host, Gabrielle. Thanks for tuning in.